regular meeting of the Oregon Criminal Justice Commission. Let's start by taking roll. Alex, if you could do that.
Will do. Commissioner Auxier.
Present.
Commissioner Bovet, or Vice Chair Bovet.
Present.
Commissioner Beach, not here. Commissioner Freeman.
Present.
Commissioner Solomon.
Present.
Senator Brzezinski is not here, I believe. And then Rep. Lewis.
Present.
Thanks. And we got quorum.
Great. All right. Well, the first agenda item we have that we always have is just an opportunity for public comment. So I'll ask, are there members of the public who would like to speak for a couple of minutes to the Criminal Justice Commission about any item that's not on our agenda? Let's see if, and if you could just raise your hand, that would be great. And not seeing any, so let's get to our next agenda item, and I think that looks like it's Ian's, and I think Ian is on to talk about amendment approval or possible amendment approval for the Crook County JRI grant.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bovet, members of the Commission. My name is Ian Davidson, and I am the Justice Reinvestment Program Manager. And as Vice Chair Bovet said, today I'm presenting you the Crook County's amendment request. And so a little bit of background about amendment request processes. So typically, or as a rule, the Commission needs to approve amendment requests to grant programs under two conditions. The first is when an amendment request movement exceeds 10% of a total grant award. And the second is when a new program is created. And otherwise, if those two criteria are not met, staff can approve the amendment requests as they come in. And they do come in periodically, typically it's minor movements of funds, in which case we don't come to the Commission for approvals like that. So Crook County's request, they are requesting to create a new program. They are thus why I'm here before you today. So they are requesting to move $100,000 of their total grant award from an underutilized work crew program, and they would create a new program which would hire a qualified mental health professional, which would be housed within the County Community Corrections Office. And this QMHP, this qualified mental health professional, will be able to work with community correction clients' mental health providers directly to assist with accurate mental health diagnosis and treatment. They would also be available to assist with mental health crisis and stabilization of both probation clients as well as adults in custodies in the jail. After reviewing this amendment request, we as staff are recommending approval of this amendment request. If there's any questions, I'm happy to field them.
Great, thanks, Ian. Do commissioners have any questions of staff? Or if there's anyone from Crook County that would like to speak to this, I'm certainly happy to honor that if there is. It looks like Commissioner Solomon has a question. Go ahead.
Ian, given that we're well into the biennium, I want to make sure that they're able to spend this money down by the 12/31 deadline. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, that was the first question I had for them as well. And so they do intend to be able to hire quickly. The $100,000 that they have is not anticipating a December 1 start date, for example. They're anticipating some time to be able to hire.
Great. That was my next question. Great. Super. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Not seeing or hearing any. Is someone willing to make a motion to approve this recommendation?
So moved.
Commissioner Solomon moves to approve the grant amendment request from Crook County for their JRI grant. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Auxier seconds the motion. Is there any further discussion about this particular request? Not seeing any. Alex, if you want to call the roll.
Good. For the first voting item, Crook County amendment, Commissioner Auxier.
Yes.
Commissioner Beach absent. Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Solomon,
Solomon votes aye.
and Vice Chair Bavette,
Yes.
with
So,
Chair Brooks absent as well. So
that motion passes. So our next agenda item, supplemental funding approval, restorative justice grant program. It looks like Rachel will be taking that one on. Go ahead, Rachel.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bovett and Commissioners. Good afternoon. Let me pull this up real fast. All right, I am Rachel MacArthur. I'm a policy analyst for the Criminal Justice Commission, and today we are asking that you authorize the supplemental funding request for the Restorative Justice Grant Program. And upon recommendation from CJC staff, the commission approved the distribution of unallocated funds to existing grantees, and so we had grantees submit a budget sheet outlining funding requests. The Grant Advisory Committee met November 9th, last week of this year, to determine, basically to analyze whether or not each grantee's request of additional funding was in line with what was approved in the application round. And the total amount of funds that was requested exceeded the available funds by a little over 29,000. And so the Grant Advisory Committee recommended targeted reductions in the form of across the board percentages to be made to 2 training and assistance requests designed to support all grantees. So these were requests that were made in multiple applications, and these targeted reductions were made to minimize the impact of the individual program needs. So for example, Deschutes County offered to host a workshop for all the grantees to be able to attend, and then technical assistance was also offered to all grantees by the Restorative Justice Coalition of Oregon. With these targeted reductions in these 2 places, they're still viable and they're still available to all of the grantees. And with that, upon the recommendations of the Grant Advisory Committee, we're asking that you authorize all 8 requests for the supplemental funding at the levels illustrated in the table.
And so if I'm understanding correctly, then the roughly $30,000 is pared down equally across the board for these additional grant requests.
Correct.
Functionally. And
Yes.
the grant applicants are aware of that.
Yes, they are. Yes.
Okay. And this is the recommendation from the RJ Grant Review Committee.
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
Great. Does any commissioners have any questions or comments for Rachel? Not hearing or seeing any. Does someone want to make a motion to approve these recommendations? It's like Commissioner Solomon is moving to
What?
approve.
Nope.
Oh, you got a question?
Yeah, got a question. So,
Go ahead with your question. Yeah.
yeah, can we pull out the Center for Dialogue and Resolution? As chair of our LIPSIC, I want to abstain from the vote on that one and declare a potential conflict.
No problem. Yeah, this actually occurs fairly regularly at the Criminal Justice Commission, as you're aware, Commissioner. So if we could, if we are ready for a motion, if we could get 2 separate motions, the first motion would be to approve all the recommendations with the exception of Center for Dialogue and Resolution, and then we'll come back to that in a minute.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, I think that one you can safely make,
Yeah.
Commissioner Solomon. Okay, so Commissioner Solomon makes the motion to approve these grant adjustment requests with the exception of Center for Dialogue and Resolution. Is there a second to that motion?
I'm happy to second it. Freeman.
Commissioner Freeman seconds the motion. Is there any further discussion about approving all of these grant adjustment requests with the exception of Center for Dialogue and Resolution? And not seeing or hearing any. Let's see, I think we're still at Alex. Alex, if you want to call the roll, and then we'll have one more motion before this slide goes away.
Yep, we'll do. Approving everything except for Center for Dialogue and Resolution. Commissioner Auxier,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Solomon,
Yes.
Vice Chair Babette.
Yes.
With
That
Brooks
motion
and each being
passes.
absent. Yeah.
Great. So that motion passes. If we could have someone other than Commissioner Solomon move to approve the Center for Dialogue and Resolution requested grant adjustment, if you're so wanting to move, that would be great.
I'll move to approve the Center for Dialogue and Resolution supplemental request. Freeman.
As Commissioner Freeman moves to approve the Center for Dialogue and Resolution supplemental request, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
And we have a second from Commissioner Auxier. So is there any further questions or comments or discussion following the motion and second? And not seeing any. So Alex, if you could call the roll one more time on the Center for Dialogue and Resolution.
That's good. Commissioner Auxier,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
and Commissioner Solomon, you're
Abstain.
abstaining with this one, and then Vice Chair Babette.
Yes. So that motion passes. So we have those approved. Our next agenda item is actually a non-action item. It's a research update, looks like from Kelly.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bovet and Commissioners. I'm Kelly Officer, the Research Director at CJC. It's good to see you all today. I have a quick research update for you. And as always, if you would like more information on any of these topics or a more in-depth update, please reach out to us and let us know. So for the research team here, I'll start with our traffic stop data analysis project called STOP, Statistical Transparency of Policing Project. We are in crunch mode for that one. We are finalizing the report right now. Its public release date is December 1, and we'll be sending out a draft report to the law enforcement agencies a few days prior to that. And so we'll have the report and also an updated dashboard at that time as well. And so it's been a lot of work going into that one. And so we're looking forward to that. We've also, had a few conversations with some other jurisdictions and some other states that are taking on projects similar to STOP. And so they're just getting it up and started. So it seems to be that more and more places are kind of following that work. I know ours modeled some of the work of Connecticut, and more states are kind of taking on that particular effort. So seeing the benefit of that project, it is a good amount of work. Next up is recidivism. So we're working on our next recidivism update. Our last one came out in May, and so we're working on the next round now. As you may recall from the one back in May, we had some pretty noticeable drops in recidivism rates likely due to COVID and Measure 110. And so we'll be doing the next update here very soon for that one. I imagine we'll continue to see rates that are kind of below pre-COVID rates, but we'll see if they continue to drop or start to level off. And so we'll be keeping a close eye on those that next round of the recidivism updates to see what the trends are for that. So that is coming. And then I'll finish up with use of force data reporting. So House Bill 2932 passed in the 2021 session, and that requires all law enforcement agencies in Oregon to report use of force data to the FBI. But then the CJC also receives that data to report on that annually. So the agencies were required to start collecting and reporting January 1 this year. So we're going to get a full calendar year of data from the agencies, and then we'll compile that and write the first report for the use of force information. So the data collection system already exists through the FBI. We don't have to create it like we did for STOP. And so that's a bit of a benefit on that front. And then we'll have kind of that first year of data to do the reporting there for that. So that'll be coming in early 2023 for that new effort of reporting on the use of force information. And I'll wrap up there and be happy to take any questions.
Any questions or comments from commissioners about Kelly's report on these 3 upcoming reports that sound like a lot of work? Great. Not seeing any questions or comments from anyone. Great work, Kelly, as always, and look forward to those reports, actually all 3 of them. So thank you very much. See, next up is an agency update. I'm not sure if Director Sanchagrin has joined us. If he has, now is his time because he is here.
He's currently walking back from the Capitol. So, yes. The joys of in-person things again, I guess.
I should have planned a longer update. I could have given him a little more time.
Kelly, didn't we win an award for the stop report?
Well, that's
recently?
true. You know what? I will take Ken's glory on this one. I know Ken was planning to share this, and so you may get to hear it twice, but I'm just going to take the opportunity to do it anyway. As I was talking about the stop report, and that is a lot of work. We were the Justice Research and Statistics Association, JRSA, is the National Association of all state statistical analysis centers, which is what our team is. And they do publication awards every year. So we just found out last week that we were awarded a publication award for last year's stop report, which gave us a little boost to in the crunch mode time of this year's stop report. So we're very happy to receive that news and that recognition. And we'll be getting the recognition in a virtual meeting next week for that publication award. So the team did a really great job on that. It's a very relevant topic. It's a lot of work. And so that was some very nice news for our team to get for those efforts.
Very cool. And I think we've won a number of awards actually for our data collection and reporting, and this will just add to the list. I hate to say it, but I think we're way ahead of most other states on this stuff. Just having looked around at other nearby states, which is intensely helpful, at least to me in the stuff that I work with. Any other comments or questions from folks? Otherwise, maybe we'll just take a quick, 5-minute break and come back and listen to Ken. If that.
Oh, there he is.
There he is. He's probably exhausted, having just run back from the Capitol.
I've not learned my lesson about in-person meetings yet. I got to get back in the swing of things.
It's we've gone through the agenda, Ken, and authorized the actions that were necessary, and pretty much all we have left on the agenda is your agency update.
Wonderful. I will share my screen and get that going. Let's see. All right, hopefully that's pulled up for everybody. You can see agency update slide there. Excellent. So I just wanted to pass on a couple pieces of information to the commission today. First, talk about our budget just a little bit to put a little bit of perspective as to where we are entering this upcoming legislative session, but then also to mention the 4 legislative concepts that at least the current governor has given us leave to present to the legislature. I'll do a very brief overview of those as well. So I wanted to mention our budgetary asks this coming year. That's the main focus of what I have today. And that's mostly because it looks very different than what we would normally expect to see in the run up to a legislative long session. Due to many different disparate factors, over the past few legislative sessions, CJC has been given a lot of work to do and has had a lot of permanent grant funding programs established. However, permanent funding for those programs has not necessarily followed the creation of the program. And so because of that, but then also because of the statutorily mandated sunset of justice reinvestment, we at the commission have a relatively large number of policy option package funding asks this biennium, certainly compared to other biennia. As you can see, it totals around $87 million. So I'm going to go through these pops quickly, I promise, quickly, but one by one, just to give an overview of what they are. And then I'll kind of talk about where we're at in the process with those. And so there's our short description of each package. I'll send this as a follow-up to the commissioners when we're finished today. I'll mention first just two internal packages that we have proposed. One is for a federal grant specialist and one is for a senior policy analyst fix. Very briefly, one thing that we've seen through COVID and then also just over the past few years is that increasingly at the commission, we are handling more and more federal grants. That's partially due to some changes at the federal level for how different entities can apply for federal pass-through dollars. But then also, I think with the response to COVID, other federal programs, we've seen more and more of these. We currently have one person on our staff who is supported by a federal grant who engages in all of the reporting and other types of responsibilities. But what we're proposing to the governor and to the legislature is the notion of allowing us to hire one additional individual into that type of position to provide more support on the application side. Even though we've increased the number of federal grants that we've received, there is a lot of federal money out there that if we had the time and the resource to apply for, we could be bringing a lot more federal dollars into the state. So that's policy option package number 101. The second is more of a fix to a prior position that was given to us. We overfilled one of our positions for one of the projects that we've gotten. So we're just trying to true that up with the legislature. So that one's a little bit more boring, but that was POP 102. Now we get into the slightly bigger asks. POP 103 is our Justice Reinvestment Grant Program package ask. I mentioned that this program is slated to sunset on July 1st, 2024. So that will be sunsetting midway through the biennium. What that means from a budgeting perspective is that in our CSL for the agency, we have the assumption that we will get 1 year's worth of justice reinvestment funding. In an attempt to address this potential cliff that we don't want to fall off of, as you'll see in a few slides, we have both a legislative concept that would push out the sunset of the program, but then also as a kind of a backup plan or an additional line of attack, we also have POP 103, which would request the full amount of 2-year JRI funding to be delivered to us during that first 1-year period before the sunset goes into effect. We can, from a contracting standpoint, ensure that this money gets out to our counties. We can play with project periods a little bit to ensure that they have that full amount to spend, but we would view this as a stopgap if we're not able to get legislative movement on the actual program extension. POP 104 is for our Restorative Justice Grant Program. This is one of those grant programs that while it was created as a permanent program through its enabling legislation, HB 2204, the funding for it came to us in the end of session bill in 2021, which means that we only received one-time funding for the program. We hope to continue this program, as you heard earlier during this meeting. We have lots of baby programs that we have incubated and we are helping to get off the ground. And we know that without continued funding, it will be very difficult for some of those to sustain themselves. POP 105 is for a grant program that you all don't hear about too much here as commissioners. The Improving People's Access to Community-Based Treatments, Supports, and Services Program, or IMPACTS, is a program that had a governance structure that was set up statutorily that exists outside of the normal commission process. However, it is a grant that we administer as commission staff, and it's one that certainly, with a lot of the issues that we see around our state right now, we believe is an important component to trying to address our behavioral health crisis. What this grant essentially tries to do is it tries to look at that intersection or the nexus between high utilization of behavioral health resources and high utilization of criminal justice system resources. So the folks who cycle in and out of ERs, in and out of jails, and it funds programs that are designed to provide services for those folks in an eye towards reducing the reliance on both systems. It was also a program that has been given one-time money to legislative sessions in a row, most recently in the end of session bill. So we're hoping to be able to establish that one on a more firm footing. POP 106 is our illegal marijuana market enforcement grant program. This one has received a lot of attention, both in other task forces, but then a lot of positive notoriety in the news, I think. Normally, this has been a $6 million program funded through marijuana tax dollars. However, during the emergency sessions in 2021, our funding for this program was increased by $26 million above that normal amount. And so we have a policy option package to keep funding at that level to ensure that the investments that we've made during this past biennium and the services that are being provided continue at least into the next biennium, because we don't believe this problem is one that is solvable simply in this very near term. And finally, two other smaller packages that we put forward. In 2021, we received funding to create what is known as the Innovative Grant Fund. With the number of programs that we have been implementing, this is one that has taken a little bit of a back seat, so it's still under development. Though we have some ideas on some good ways to use this money, but we're seeking more permanent funding for this program too as we get it off the ground. And then finally, there is the POP 108 for the Family Preservation Project. This is a program that provides supports and services to incarcerated parents in Coffee Creek. It's administered by the YWCA of Portland. It's a program that's had various funding streams throughout the life of this program. And we agreed with the FPP folks that we would at least make a request for funding for this program to try to get it on firmer footing, so that we have that option if the legislature would see fit, or if the governor chooses to include it in her budget. And so those are our 8 POPs. I'll pause for a moment to see if there are any questions. Hopefully I got in on the expedited explanation like I promised. And just as a by the way, I can only see Vice Chair Bovet. So if folks are raising their hand, I would rely on you, Rob, to help let me know.
No problem. I think Commissioner Solomon has a question or a comment, and we'll go from there.
Excellent. Thank you.
Can you go back to, I think it's POP 101 or 102? Yeah, the federal grant specialist. So if I understood you correctly, this money is paying for one new position. The other position, I'm just curious why that wasn't part of your agency budget in the CSL.
Thank you for that question, Commissioner Solomon. It may have been my quest for a quick explanation probably kind of glazed over that. So we do fully anticipate that our current grant supported position will continue to be funded, whether that's through grant dollars that we've already received at the federal level, or especially some of the new money that we're seeing come in through some additional federal programs. What we are seeking from the legislature is position authority for those 2 FTE, but that we would only be requesting funding for 1 FTE from general fund state dollars. We would continue to use the federal funds for that other FTE.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
No, thank you for the question. I understand that was definitely one probably that was confusing.
Yeah, and one other question about the impacts grant. So looked like that's going to pick up the second year of the biennium. And are those funds are capital requests allowable within the impacts grant program? Just curious about that.
yes, those types of capital improvements are allowed within that program.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I have one, but before I get to that, I'll see if anybody else has any. Not seeing any. You don't have to change the page, Ken, because I just have a real quick comment about Pop 106, as you might have suspected. So just to let everybody know, the IMM EGP, what is here is just a piece of what the House Bill 3000 task force is recommending in terms of funding. We actually recommended to the full committee $40 million as a baseline for the enforcement side. What Ken has is 26 plus 6, which is 32. So we're actually a little higher than that. In addition to the $6 million for victim services, in addition to the $5 million for water masters, in addition to Oregon State Police, in addition to Department of Justice, resource prosecutors. But the only thing that flows through CJC is the IMM EGP pieces. And so I think this accurately reflects essentially CSL, for lack of a better way of putting it. But I think we're going to want more than CSL in terms of our ask. So just to flag that for you, I know that doesn't come through CJC, that's through the separate task force, but just to flag that for you.
Yeah, and I appreciate that flag, Vice Chair, for all of us. I think that given the size of the request overall that we were submitting, we decided to go with CSL there, and we've been very welcoming of the opportunity to work with the HB 3000 task force to right size that amount.
Sounds good. Yeah, and that'll probably happen in December in terms of what the formal recommendations will look like. So anybody have any questions or comments for Ken about any of these proposed pops? Not seeing any, Ken. So if there's more to your report, you can move along.
Yes, just two more quick things. The first is wrapping up the budget discussion. We as an agency have had our budget appeal, at least under the current gubernatorial administration. I think that appeal went very well considering the number of asks that we have. We anticipate having a redo of that meeting with the transition team for the new administration. And so more to come on that, and still very hopeful that at least, one or a few of our programs may be included in the incoming governor's budget. The other update that I'll provide is basically a quick rundown of our legislative concepts that we have leave to submit at this moment. So we have three different substantive concepts. One that is kind of a normal one if you've been around the CJC for a while. So the first one is LC 385, and that's a placeholder bill for any rulemaking sentencing changes that the commission adopts during the preceding biennium. We have not made any yet this biennium, but we do anticipate having one or two very small rule changes that we will be introducing next month or in the very beginning of January. Nothing on par with the murder rule discussion, though, that we had in the past biennium. LC 386 is our JRI program extension LC. That one, if you are interested, it will look very similar to SB 47 from the 2021 session. However, it has the actual extensions for the programs built in. There are some other small tweaks that we included in there, but for the most part, we're focused primarily on making sure that the program lives on for at least another 10 years. LC 387 is what we're calling our jail healthcare placeholder. As you heard from Ms. Bridget Budbill over the past few months, at least leading up into the release of our September jail committee report on healthcare in Oregon's jails, we pre-session filed a placeholder for any legislative recommendations that could go into that could be considered in this upcoming session. We have been invited to present at December legislative days, where we will be working with Representative Marsh, who is the original sponsor of the study bill, on a few legislative tweaks that we will be rolling out at that time. So we'll pass that information on to commissioners, but then that'll also be our one December Leg Days job that we have. And then the last one is LC 388. This would be a bill that would reconstitute the Public Safety Task Force, which was most recently used to study pretrial. But in this case, we would be reconstituting the task force to assist the commission and commission staff in executing its statutory responsibility to craft a statewide public safety plan. Over the past decade, the statewide public safety plan we've been operating under has been the Justice Reinvestment Program and Initiative. But given the changeover in our state house, given the changeover in what we've seen since COVID societally, changes in crime rates, certainly the addiction crisis that we're facing at this point in time, we believe that the time is right to try to take a holistic approach to convening all of the stakeholders who have some things to say about public safety in the state, and to think about where we would like to go from a policy perspective over the next 5 to 10 years. And so while we can do that on our own, we think that the legitimacy that using the Public Safety Task Force as the main vehicle for that project, the legitimacy it would give to it, we think that would be a nice vehicle for actually crafting something, and then coming back to the next legislature with a full report and any suggested legislative changes. And so those are our 4 LCs. I'm not sure if folks have questions about those, but that is the last thing that I have today.
Great, thanks, Ken. Anybody have any commissioners have any questions or comments for Ken or the CJC staff? Not seeing any or hearing any. All right, well, it looks like we are through our agenda. Is there anything further from CJC staff or Ken?
Not for me.
All right. Anything else from commissioners, or are we ready to adjourn this meeting? All right, well, we are adjourned. We'll see you at the next Criminal Justice Commission meeting, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.